Hi, welcome to Read It Bomb. This is Read It, the Book of Mormon. Thank you so much for tuning in, for watching. And yeah, don't forget to always read the scriptures and pray to your Heavenly Father. So again, Read It Bomb, Read It, the Book of Mormon, where we talk about all things relating to the Book of Mormon, to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to the restoration of the gospel. Yeah, and so let's get into it. So today's title for this video, this stream, is Debunking Capturing Christianity's, which that's a channel on YouTube. So Debunking Capturing Christianity's 15 Attacks on Joseph Smith, Part 1. Okay, and the thing is at this moment we can't do Part 2, Part 3. I couldn't film these consecutively because he's trying to build up this I think great video that he's going to release. That's what it seems like. So he keeps teasing this video that's going to be 15 attacks on Joseph Smith, and so he's released 3 of them so far, and I'm labeling this debunking all 15 attacks because based on these 3, um, the ones that follow are not going to be that great, and they're going to be pretty low level criticisms. So he and one of these is just like the biggest stretch I've ever seen in my life. It's almost laughable. And then the other 2 are pretty interesting questions, but again, you can see that he's falling short on research, or he's trying to be polemical, or he just already has made up his conclusion and does not actually want to do any kind of research on from a pro Latter-day Saint understanding to actually give a fair viewpoint. It's pretty obvious he's just trying to dissuade people by, again, copy and pasting arguments. So as we saw in with Capturing Christianity, I think his name's Cameron. One of my last streams was debunking his understanding of Joseph Smith translation Genesis. I believe, was it chapter 50 or is it chapter 30? I forgot. But he totally just copy and pasted that from Mike Winger, right? He didn't even look into it. He kept saying things that made that pretty clear, and so there's 1 or 2 of these that seem pretty obvious. He didn't really do any research from a pro Latter-day Saint website or organization or anything like that. So let's get into this and let's see what he's got to offer. So the 3 things that he started, or to kind of boost the 15 attacks, the 3 that he's released are and sorry, I'm saying attacks on Joseph Smith, but it's actually attacks on 2 people. So he's trying to take down 2 birds with 1 stone. So this video is 15 attacks on both Muhammad and Joseph Smith, because he's trying to make these parallels that are just so disturbing. These parallels be so disturbing, not because they're parallels, but because the things that he's talking about should be disturbing. And because apparently both of these appear in Islam and Mormonism in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it should disprove instantly both of them. So I don't really care about Muhammad. I don't think he's a prophet, and it's pretty clear that he's teaching things that we obviously can't believe, as in he says that Jesus is not the Christ. He says Christ did not die on the cross for our sins, and he said that Christ was not resurrected on the 3rd day. Pretty clear all that is completely false, and I don't really care about Muhammad. But in the video, he's trying to compare Muhammad and Joseph Smith. So I just wanted to mention that before you start hearing some things. It's like, well, why is this talking about Muhammad? He's trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But the thing is, with where he's coming from with his Joseph Smith stuff, I'm questioning some of the information he's talking about Muhammad, or giving about Muhammad, or at least how he's giving it. So again, let's hop into it. So the first one we're going to be talking about, let me share my screen, is about apparently the parallel between how both Muhammad and Joseph Smith were at one point possessed by the devil. That's his claim. So let me see right here. Manipulated. This one. Let's share this. Okay. So we're going to be talking about how, in his words, both Muhammad and Joseph Smith were at one point manipulated by the devil, and this will prove that both belief systems are false. So this is how he starts off, and I'll pause and skip the Muhammad part because I don't care, and just get to the Joseph Smith part to save time.
So let me get this straight. So both Muhammad and Joseph Smith claimed to be prophets.
One second. Let me make sure this is not too fast for y'all. Let's bring it down to 125. And we'll start that over.
All right, so let me get this straight. So both Muhammad and Joseph Smith claimed to be prophets, but each of them got manipulated by demons. Yeah, it's not exactly what you want on like a.
Okay, this guy, just like as you watch these videos, the AI images he comes up with, it's very uncharitable, and they're just goofy, and it's for the reason. Actually, this one actually looks like a dope image. All the Joseph Smith ones, he just makes them look goofy, but this actually is not that bad of an image. That that looks like an interesting cover for interesting fantasy book or something. I don't know. Let's keep going.
Prophet's resume is it? And if that sounds bizarre, like just wait, because this is only one of 15 creepy parallels between Islam and Mormonism that we expose in our full video, which is linked in the description. And trust me,
again, he's setting, especially this is like the first one he put out, right? So this is apparently number 2 of 15. In the title, this is number 2. So in the video, this is, I think, the second one that's going to pop up. This one is so laughable. Okay, this one is ridiculous. I don't know about the Muhammad thing, but the Joseph Smith thing, this one is ridiculously laughable. So again, he's talking about the parallel between how Muhammad and Joseph Smith were possessed by the devil.
You definitely want to see the rest. So let's talk about how Muhammad and Joseph Smith had some pretty concerning run-ins with demonic forces that left a pretty serious mark.
Or run-ins with demonic forces
on their ministries. Starting with Muhammad, according to...
Okay, so we're going to skip Muhammad, and we're going to skip to 145. And so basically with Muhammad, he just says that there's a point where with Muhammad, that Muhammad apparently like gave a prophecy, or like he started receiving revelation, and he started like saying, oh, you should worship these pagan gods. And like Muhammad himself said, oh, actually, like that actually came from the devil. And so like he's like, well, that's weird that he started receiving revelation directly from the devil. So that was that part, and then this is the Joseph Smith part.
Like, no big deal, right? All right, let's move on now to Joseph Smith, who also couldn't seem to avoid dark forces in his life. Before his first vision...
So again, he's going to bring this up, but let's just talk about Jesus Christ, right? Like, Jesus Christ got baptized, goes into the desert for 40 days, and then boom, like during that time or right after that time, he has a run-in with the devil, right? So he's actually going to bring this up, and it's going to be hilarious, like just the absurdity of his comparison when he brings that up. But just because you have a run-in with a demonic force or with the devil does not inherently make you somehow evil. Like that, he's setting this up. There's some sort of fallacy going on here, but like he's setting this up to say, like, if you somehow have any interaction with the devil, you are then scarred by that, and like you are somehow then demonic, which Jesus Christ had a run-in with it, and that's complete. He's God, right? He saved us all from our sins. So that he wasn't scarred or marred or somehow everything after that was demonic. So this doesn't even make sense where he's going with it. And then he'll try to bring up the whole Jesus Christ thing and try to turn that around where that's not an issue for him. But yeah, so let's get into what he's going to say about how Joseph Smith was somehow possessed by the devil. Well, not possessed, but like how compared to Muhammad, he was interacting with the devil, and because he interacted with the devil somehow, that means that Mormonism is false. That's what he's trying to say. So let's look into this.
Vision. Smith claimed that he was overcome by a dark power, leaving him complete life. Before his first vision, Smith claimed that he was overcome by a dark power, leaving him completely paralyzed and surrounded by thick darkness. This first-hand account can actually be found in the official Mormon scriptures, namely in the Pearl of Great Price. And this was not a one-off occurrence. Smith reported several encounters with demonic forces conveniently happening right before his biggest revelations. Now, let's contrast this with...
So that was it. So this amazing parallel between Muhammad, who apparently Muhammad was receiving revelations directly from the devil, and that he had to somehow talk himself out of that and like tell his followers, no, that's actually not the case. His big thing is, before Joseph Smith's first vision, Joseph Smith was like attacked by the devil spiritually. right? And that apparently means Mormonism bad, right? Like this, guys, that's just dumb, right? Like he's saying, okay, so Joseph Smith has his first vision. He's going to go pray to ask God, like, hey, what should I do? Forgive me for my sins, and what church should I join? And Satan, knowing that this is going to be an integral part of the restoration of the gospel and many glorious things for God to come, tries to dissuade Joseph Smith from doing that and attacks him and tries to stop him from praying. But Joseph Smith continues to pray during that, actually, and then God shows up and was like, "Hey, you know what? Like, no, like, this is your sins are forgiven. You're gonna end up being the prophet to bring forth many things, like, and that's just the start of the prophetic, life of Joseph Smith, because he was attacked by the devil to try to dissuade him from saying this prayer, which the devil probably knew was actually going to cause many glorious things. The marvelous work and a wonder that God had prepared for us in these latter days. That means Mormonism bad. Like, this doesn't even make sense. Every single Christian, every single person on earth is tempted by the devil, right? And Joseph Smith in this moment was tempted not to pray. He was being attacked in order to dissuade him from trying to do what he was trying to do. And apparently for Cameron, that's this guy's name, on Capturing Christianity, the host, this is proof that Joseph Smith bad, Mormonism bad. Like, this is laughable, dude. Like, this doesn't even make sense. Everybody is attacked by Satan. So that means everybody bad, right? And again, this dude's Catholic. So it doesn't even make sense where this guy's coming from, because with Catholic history, there's a number of things that don't really add up. And with the lines of popes and things like this, and coming out and say this guy was attacked by Satan in order to dissuade him from doing this. This means he's bad, even though actually he continued to pray, had faith in Christ, and has brought millions of people to Christ through his actions. Like, dude, come on. Okay, so we had a comment. Yes, Protestants say there's polygamy in the Old Testament, but Joseph Smith refuted polygamy in the New Testament. Oh, but Jesus refuted polygamy in the New Testament, but they say Joseph was going against Jesus. Yeah, so we'll get into that. So we'll get into the polygamy stuff, because that's coming up, and again, it's kind of laughable in a way, because again, kind of like he was saying, polygamy is in the Bible, and then he's trying to say that. We'll get into that when we get into that. Again, this isn't scripted, so sorry if it's a little scatterbrained, but he's right here. He's saying, because in the first vision, Joseph Smith was attacked by the devil, then actually all of Mormonism is demonic. It doesn't make sense. So let's hop into now, continuing with what he's saying, to how he's going to turn this around and say, well, Jesus actually interacted with the devil, but actually Jesus isn't bad, right? Jesus wasn't, that didn't scar Jesus. Christianity is actually true, even though Jesus interacted with the devil. So let's see what he has to say. And here we go.
Jesus Christ. When Satan came to tempt Jesus during his 40-day fast in Matthew 4:1-11, Jesus didn't fall for any of his tricks. He didn't mistake Satan's voice for God's voice or become paralyzed. In fact, he stood firm and sent Satan.
So Joseph Smith fell for the devil. He fell for the devil's trick by, the devil's like, oh, stand on, if you stand here, you'll become paralyzed. And Joseph Smith was like, oh, that must be God tell me that. And he stood there and no, like, dude, this is just so ridiculously dumb. I'm sorry. He's attacked by the devil because he's trying to, come to Christ, and that he's actually, the devil knows this guy's going to be, used in God's hands to bring about the marvelous work and wonder that is the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay. And this guy right here, Cameron, is just like, oh, well, Joseph Smith just fell for the devil's tricks because he got paralyzed. Like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, and he's comparing Jesus to Joseph Smith. And he's going to do this throughout these 3 videos. And I'm guessing throughout these 15 attacks in this big video he's going to release, right? Jesus is God, right? Jesus is the Son of God. He's divine. He's all powerful. And he's comparing men who are Muhammad and Joseph Smith. And Muhammad's not a prophet, but Joseph Smith is simply just a prophet, right? Like any of the other prophets. And I'll bring some up in a second, because if this is the standard that we're going to be held to, that we have to be exactly like Jesus Christ, who is the Son of God and is divine, right? And can like basically is perfect enough to pay the price for our sins and is all powerful enough to actually withstand the torment and in order to pay that price. Like this doesn't make any sense. So let's let him finish, and then he's comparing Joseph Smith to Jesus and saying Joseph Smith bad because the devil attacked him and like tried to stop him from saying his prayer in the first vision, but Jesus good because Jesus can can cast Satan off and didn't fall for any of the tricks. Jesus is God. Like again, this comparison is just such a stretch.
Satan packing without breaking a sweat. Jesus wasn't just good at resisting demonic influence, he literally dominated it. Jesus was extremely well known as an exorcist, regularly casting out demons with authority. Wherever he went, the demonically possessed trembled and unclean spirits obeyed his commands. Whether he was healing the afflicted or casting out evil spirits.
So there is recorded events of Joseph Smith casting out a demon, right? So yes, we have that too. But let's continue because we got to wrap this part up.
Jesus demonstrated total control over the spiritual realm. So while Muhammad and Smith were out there getting confused and paralyzed by dark forces, Jesus was showing unmatched power and authority over them. In short, Jesus is pretty based. There's not really a comparison. Okay, so if you thought...
Okay, there we go. That wraps it up. So Jesus is based, obviously, because he's God, right? And you're comparing God to Joseph Smith, and you're saying, well, Joseph Smith got paralyzed because the devil attacked him and was trying to get him not to say his prayer during the first vision and actually end up being the prophet of the last dispensation to bring forth the Book of Mormon, to restore temples, to restore the priesthood, all these, powerful and needed things for God's plan to, his plan of salvation to come about. And because he got paralyzed, all of Mormonism is evil and should be thrown in the dumpster. But God actually didn't become paralyzed when he talked to them. Like, dude, this is just stupid, right? That's a stupid comparison. Of course, Jesus is all powerful. He's going to cast the devil. He's going to cast the devil out. He's not going to fall for temptation. But you're holding a prophet, a normal man, up to God's standard. So let's do that with the Bible. How many people in the Bible do we have to throw out? We have to throw out Jonah, right? Jonah's no longer a prophet. Well, Jesus actually, talks about Jonah, right? And so, well, what does that mean? You have to throw out Peter. This dude's Catholic, right? Cameron's Catholic. Peter literally denied Christ. Christ never denied the Father. Christ, Christ never denied anybody, right? Peter, the founder of Cameron's church, of the Catholic Church, denied Christ 3 times, right? And then he received a revelation of, oh, we should welcome the Gentiles in. And then after receiving that revelation, he had hesitancy. He was like, oh, I'm going to separate myself from the Gentiles, and I'm going to give in to the Judaizers a little bit. And Paul had to call him out for it. Like, dude, like Jesus didn't do that. No, he didn't like say, you know what, like these Pharisees, I'm going to give in to them a little bit because like they're kind of scaring me a little bit. No. So you can't compare apostles and prophets to Jesus and say, well, if they're not a 1-for-1 with Jesus, then they're of the devil, and they're false prophets. This comparison is dumb, right? He's going to do that throughout these 3 videos that we're going to talk about, and then most likely he's going to continue this in the full big video that he's going to release with these 15 attacks. So, like, be prepared for that and see that in the coming up, where he goes from talking about Joseph Smith to like, well, Jesus didn't do this. Okay, Jesus is God. He's perfect. Well, what are you trying to point out? So I'm probably beating a dead horse with that, but I just thought it was laughable, right? That he's trying to make this comparison. He's trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone by making parallels between Muhammad and Joseph Smith. And by making these parallels, and that they're so outlandish that automatically, like, this video is going to disprove both of these religions, right? One, this parallel is a big stretch, right? Because literally receiving revelation from the devil and like saying we should worship pagan gods and like writing that down in scripture and then like, oh, let me backtrack that. We don't need to worship pagan gods. I'm not saying that's true or not. I haven't looked into that. That's what he's saying Muhammad did. And then he's saying, Oh, and then on Joseph Smith's hand, the devil attacked him and tried to not to get him to pray to God. That itself is not a parallel. That is a stretch. That is a huge stretch. And then saying, well, because the devil attacked him and became paralyzed for a little bit, and he couldn't, and he had to fight to actually say this prayer, that actually Joseph Smith himself is demonic, and that his religion is demonic. Like, again, dude, it's laughable. And then comparing that to Jesus, saying, well, Jesus didn't do that, dude. Okay, so that is the first one. Let's see. Okay, we are going to go now to the second video. Now, the second video, again, so the first one that we just watched, complete stretch, laughable. It's, it's like, dude, come on, this you shouldn't even have added this attack. It doesn't make any sense, at least on the Joseph Smith part. I know about the Muhammad part. I'm not here to talk about Muhammad. The next two videos, they're actually good questions. Okay, so we're going to get into talking about how we in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, believe that God has a body, right? So we're going to talk about how we believe God has a body, and he's going to use that and compare that to apparently Islam, where he says, some people in Islam believe that because of certain things in the Quran, and then we're going to move forward, and he's going to try to use this as an attack on both Muhammad and Joseph Smith. So let's see where it goes with this. Let me remove this and let me share my screen with the next video. Okay, so this one is God's body. Okay, share. I believe this one's it. Yes. So this is actually parallel number 9. So the one we just watched was number 2. This one's number 9. Then the one we're going to watch about plural marriage, that one is 19. Sorry, that one is 13. So he's kind of doing teasers, right? Releasing one here, one here, one here every 2 days, and then soon he's going to release the whole thing. So we're going to watching these and how it's clear he didn't do any kind of research on the LDS side of this, and he's just copying and pasting, as we saw before in the video I did about his JST. Joseph Smith wrote him into the Bible video. Like, he's just copy and pasting, right? A lot of criticisms about Joseph Smith. But the thing about this video, he's trying to tie this into Muhammad also. So I believe this one is it. So let me get it started.
So Muhammad and Joseph Smith both believed apparently that God had hands and feet. Like, really? Like, we're turning God into some sort of like cosmic action figure. If you think that's weird, you haven't seen anything yet. This is just one.
Like, cosmic action figure. Like, you know what? Like, let's just pick him up. Let's play with his little arms. Let's spin him around, make him do a backflip. Like, dude, again, the arrogance that rolls off this guy when he's talking about these things is ridiculous. His whole thing is like, guys, we don't need to take these people seriously because it's just so dumb. And so I'm going to make these videos. I'm not going to do any research. I'm not going to do anything because we all know it's just so dumb, So I'm just here to, give you a little endorphin release because you already know these people are dumb for believing this stuff. So, like, that's the type of video he's releasing, and he has released. So again, let's get into it, and then I have actually some questions to throw back and say, well, yes, we believe God has a body, but have you done research into that, and have you understand what that opens up for us, and not for y'all, and instead of believing that God is this immaterial spirit and all the problems that brings. So let's see what he's got to say.
Of the 15 disturbing parallels between Islam and Mormonism.
Disturbing parallels
that I think disprove both religions. If you want more, you got to check out.
And these disturbing parallels that disprove both religions. They're just so disturbing. Okay, the last one was a stretch at best, and literally didn't even make sense about Joseph Smith part. It was the stupidest thing ever.
Our full video, which is linked in the description, because trust me, it gets way wilder. In Islam, even those scholars will like literally bend over backward to insist that God.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I'm not going to watch the Islam part. I'm going to skip to 115 in the video. So the 115 is about Joseph Smith.
This to a whole new level. According to Doctrine and Covenants, God the Father doesn't just have a metaphorical body. He has an actual literal body of flesh and bones.
Okay, I wonder if he actually knows what Doctrine and Covenants is. I really wonder that. But yes, Doctrine and Covenants does say that God has a literal body. But listen again, this guy, he's either Catholic or he's leaning Catholic. Listen, and whenever someone like this, even Protestants, whenever they start talking about God's body, they use philosophically and theologically charged language. And they try to say, well, you believe the body's an essential characteristic. No, they don't, and I'll explain that in a second. But they don't actually look into what our canon and our scripture actually says about God's body. They just say, "Oh, you believe God has a body," so and they just start using language that's philosophically charged that we actually don't believe. So let's continue and hear what he has to say, and then I'll jump in every once in a while and correct him.
In Mormon theology, God is fully embodied, interacting.
Boom. Okay, right off the bat, God is fully embodied. No, right? So what he means by this is that God cannot extend past his physical body, right? His stretch can only go as far as his arm can stretch, right? His height can only go as far as he can stand up tall. No, this is false, right? There's no other way to get past what he just said there. God is fully embodied. No, we Latter-day Saints believe that God is actually holding the worlds in their orbit, right? A number of the books in our canon say that, right? He's holding this universe together, right? So God, his limits and his extent of his reach are not limited to his body, right? God controls this universe. God controls this world, and he does that through his power. His power and his light emanate and fill the immensity of space. I don't remember the exact quote, but there is like a quote that literally says that from, I think, DNC. And so, no, God's light, his presence, his power is present and prevalent throughout all of the universe. There's not, well, God, God's sitting on Kolob. No, it's not God sitting on Kolob, and therefore he can't hear our prayers, or our prayers have to wait to get to him, or, oh, you know what, God can't actually help, me because he's somewhere else right now. No, God is not fully embodied in such a way that he cannot be somewhere else and interact and be doing stuff here through his power and his presence. So again, already right off the bat, this theologically charged language. God is not fully embodied to where his body is limiting him. That's not what we believe in anyway. And yeah, so let's get into more of this. And here we go. Oh, 1 second. Let me do this right here.
With the physical world like any one of us. And it doesn't just stop there. Joseph Smith taught that God was
Oh, so did you hear that again?
interacting with the physical world like just have a metaphorical body. He has an actual literal body of flesh and bones. In Mormon theology, God is fully embodied, interacting with the physical world like any one of us.
Like any one of us. Okay, any Latter-day Saint here listening to this, if you want to put this in the comments now or not, or down below after it's gone off live, do you believe that God is interacting with the world completely like us? Right? Well, we're mortal. We're living in the world right now. I can die. I I can only do what the limits of my body and the capacity of my muscles and my bones allow me to do, right? No, in no way do I believe like God is interacting with the universe or the world in any way like I am. Like again, I can't think of any Latter Day Saint resource that would have ever given him that idea, right? So you can clearly see, especially from the first video that we just watched. You know, if you're in live coming in, go start this video, this live over, and watch the first video that we went through. This is the second one. This guy is not getting any of this. Any research has been done in Latter-day Saint friendly resources or the church's own website or anything like that. Like it's clear zero, right? No Latter-day Saint believes God currently is interacting exactly like how we are interacting with the world, right? And again, our own scriptures say that God's light fills the immensity of space, right? His presence is known everywhere, right? God's not limited to his body. And we'll get into a little bit more about this. I'll probably pull up some scriptures or at least quote them and let you know where to find them. But yeah, so again, as we've seen, copy and paste. Cameron from Capturing Christianity is copy and paste on his criticisms. He does not research on his own, because if he did, he'd have to reward these. Either, and if he has done research, then he's completely just trying to share this to, again, drop an endorphin release for his viewers who are already convinced that Mormonism is a cult and completely dumb, and anyone who watches it or believes in it is just like, brainwashed, right? So if he's done honest research, he's not showing it, which would be sharing false testimony and lying. If he hasn't done false research, which apparently it looks like, then he should start, because again, this isn't what we believe.
And it doesn't just stop there. Joseph Smith taught that God was once a man who worked his way up to godhood, and humans can do the same. So in Mormonism, God is literally human in form with a tangible body. And I mean,
Okay. So he's quoting the King Paul Discourse, right? And so God was once a man, as we are now, and once lived on an earth, right? The same as Jesus. That's the quote. The same as Jesus. Okay. So this guy is, I believe, leaning Catholic, is Catholic, but he's Christian. Every Christian believes that Christ, being God, came down and lived on this earth. We believe the Father did the same, right? Now, I'm not going to try to say that there aren't. There's a number of views on what this means within the restoration, within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? Some people believe in some sort of chain, some sort of regression of gods, okay? Other people don't. I, for one, I don't. Looking at our canon, I see that, yes, God himself most likely did and could have lived on another planet, right? The same as Christ, right? But this doesn't mean that there has to be a chain. I can get to that in another video. But what I'm saying here is he's trying to say that God is essentially embodied, but what he just said, him quoting the King Paul Discourse, disproves that, which shows he's not doing research. And again, this isn't just him. There's many people who will sit here and say, criticize us for believing, oh, look, you say God has a body. And then they'll quote something like the King Paul Discourse, which literally disproves their criticism. And then they don't see it because they don't care, right? They just want to put something together, again, to give their viewers, right? They want to dissuade people and not actually share true teachings from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or from Mormonism, or whatever you want to call it. So in the King Paul Discourse, and again, I want to make a video about this separately. Section 93 is the King Paul Discourse 11 years before the King Paul Discourse was given. If you go read Section 93, you're going to find so many of the same elements that are taught in the King Paul Discourse, and the King Paul Discourse just expands on them and opens those up, right? So in Section 93, in the King Paul Discourse, in Abraham chapter 3, we see that spirits are eternal, right? An exact quote, as exact as I can from memory, from the King Paul Discourse says that an intelligence is a spirit, right, and has no creation about it, right? So intelligences are spirits. They're not created, okay? Section 93 says that man also was in the beginning with God, and man is spirit, okay? And he just said, well, they believe that God once was a man, okay? So, and he's trying to say that God is just a creature. He'll get into that. He's trying to say that God can't be this thing that's infinite. God has to be embodied. God's not a spirit. Well, we believe that we are all eternally spirits, and that God is the most intelligent of us all, the most powerful of us all, and that he wanted us because he was so much beyond us, and that we in no way could ever become like him because he's God. He set up this whole plan of salvation in order for us to become like him because he loved us so much. And again, that I'll get into the philosophical ideas here in a second. But that itself is way more beautiful to me than saying, well, there's this thing who has no feelings. It's just this perfect ball of goodness, but it's actually immaterial, just perfect goodness. And it randomly decided to create. And it created this universe, knowing that by creating it, evil would enter into it perfectly. And it was unavoidable. And yet he did it anyway. But this random ball of goodness who created you out of nothing. He somehow does love you, but he didn't create to where evil wouldn't enter into his creation. Like, there's so many things that Joseph Smith, this farm boy, right, from I think he was born in Vermont or whatever, but upstate New York is where the first vision happened. This farm boy from basically upstate New York, from New England, right, in the early 1800s, was able to somehow, in their mind, create a theology, right, about that literally undoes all the bad theology of classic Christianity, right? Classic Christianity causes so many problems because it causes the great creator creature distinction. And at the end of this video, Cameron's actually going to like say, oh, well, there is a creator creature distinction. He's going to kind of reference that. That distinction causes so many issues like the problem of evil. The problem of evil cannot be answered by classic Christianity. They try to say, well, look, the problem of evil is that God created everything good, and then evil is just the walking away from God, or it's actually just less good. But what you're saying is this being who's all powerful, all loving, created a universe in which you could lessen the good in it and then cause all this evil, right? There's many issues with it, and they try to brush it off because they have to. It is a huge issue, right? How can this all loving, all powerful God do this? And we just say, well, you're wrong, right? Joseph Smith is quoted as saying, I think it's in the King Fall Discourse, actually. If you start off wrong, you'll end up wrong. But if you start off right, you'll end up right. And he said that talking about God having a body, being embodied, and that he himself created laws in which to organize us so that we could become like him. The plan of salvation is beautiful. It is true. Please, right? Pick the Book of Mormon up. It has nothing to do about this, but read it. The Spirit will testify to you that is true, and you'll know that through the Book of Mormon being true, you'll know that Joseph Smith is a prophet, and that the plan of salvation that the restored gospel teaches is true, and that God loves you, and that he knows you personally. And he's not this ball of goodness that has no emotion for you, because if he has emotion, he'll change. He won't be simple. And if he's not simple, then he couldn't have created the universe. That's literally what they believe, right? He's not that. He's this being who can be personable with you. He knows you. He loves you infinitely, right? And he wants you to become like him and return to live with him. The restored gospel is so much more personable and so much more pure, in my opinion. The restored gospel also, I've been talking about the problem of evil, fixes the problem of evil, right? I'll drop it in the link below. But there's someone who goes over a lot better than I can, about how the restored gospel literally fixes the problem of evil. The restored gospel uses a soul-making theodicy, and a soul-making theodicy is only possible in Mormonism, in the restored gospel, because God did not create your spirit out of nothing. Literally, the King Fall Discourse says God cannot create spirits out of nothing, because he can't. That's not something that happens. We are eternal. We're co-eternal with the Father. We're eternal beings living a mortal existence. And if we come to Christ and we live through Christ, we can be able to live with God forever in the rest of our eternal existence. And it's beautiful. But yeah, so I've kind of gone on to rant. But he's trying to say, well, that Joseph Smith taught that God has a body, and this is dumb. And again, he's getting our theology wrong. He's trying to use philosophically charged language, which isn't what we believe. So let's see. There's somebody in the comments saying that they're trying to talk to these people and they won't talk to them. Yeah, I mean, it's hard sometimes. People just like to diss on Mormons, and then they don't want to hear from us where they went wrong. So that's why I like making these reaction videos. But let's get back into this a little bit, and then I'll stop in a second whenever he says the next wrong thing.
Like, who doesn't want to think of God as like a superhero human version of ourselves that we can like eventually get to? But at what cost? God is just now another created being in the universe with flesh and bones like the rest of us. Like,
so no, right? Again, God lived on an earth like Christ, or as did Christ, right? So is Jesus Christ to this guy just some superhuman with flesh and bones, just like us? No, of course not, right? And I'll get into that. I'll get into the hypostatic union in a second. It's complete bonkers. But again, no, God is not a creature. Okay, our theology does not say that any of us are created, right? In our eternal nature. God eternally, and he's trying to make this, he'll say this in a second, he'll say that God is essentially embodied. God is not essentially embodied. God is not eternally embodied. God is a God, as we all are spirit. Man is spirit. Okay, God is spirit. Section 93 says man is spirit. We're co-eternal with the Father. The Bible says God is spirit. He'll try to quote that in a second. But we believe that eternally, all of us here are eternally spirits, and we're uncreated spirits. So God is not a creature being created by somebody else. It's he is the most powerful of us all. Read Abraham chapter 3, right? If there's one spirit, there'll be another spirit more intelligent. I, the Lord your God, I am more intelligent than they all, right? God created this whole plan because he knew that none of us could become like him, could progress without the plan of salvation, without this plan to have this time in order to show him and to tie ourselves to Christ, and through Christ overcome the follies and the weaknesses in our eternal natures, right? So we eternally have not been perfect, but God made this plan so that through Christ we could become perfect if we tie ourselves to Christ and allow Christ's grace to help us change, and to use his grace to help us change, and to give in to his commandments, and to give in to his offerings of a better existence, right? It's beautiful, it's amazing. And the way these people kind of try to turn this around and say, oh, it's just crazy. Again, it solves so many theological and philosophical issues.
But where did everything come from in the first place? Why is there anything here? There's no explanation. But suddenly,
So again, okay, classic theism is so obsessed with like, oh well, God has to be this simple thing, and the simple thing is able to create everything else. And if he's not simple, and if he's not impassable, and if he has any kind of parts, then he can no longer be the simple thing that can create everything else, right? And he's like, at what cost? Well, at what cost to you? You can't answer the problem of evil. You can't answer why God would create a universe knowing full well that it would fall into this evil mess that we have in this world, right? And they try to say, well, he did it because he wanted to give him free will, but yet God could have given us a better understanding in order to not have so much evil, right? Like again, there's so many problems with how they answer the problem of evil, and yet this farm boy from upstate New York perfectly gives a theology that answered the problem of evil. Okay, and again, I'll try to leave that link in the description with a BYU scholar who is able to say that way better, more beautifully than I would be able to. He's able to explain.
infinite transcendent creator is reduced to a physical being climbing the ladder of divinity. What's striking here is how both Islam and Mormonism make God much more relatable by turning him into someone who could almost you could like run into at the supermarket, whether it's uncreated.
Yeah, I was eating my taquerias in the market the other day, or I was eating at the taqueria in the market the other day, and God just walked in. And he's like, "Hey, that dame una torta, right? Give me a sandwich. I want one." Like, no, dude, what is this guy talking about, dude? Like, again, he's clearly just like making these videos to get an endorphin release for the people who already believe that we're just like in a cult and brainwashed, right? Like, he's not in any way trying to do any kind of scholarly research, or like, oh, I actually have these questions for them. No, it's not that in any way. No one believes that you can run into God in the supermarket, right? And you can't, right? Like, literally read again. He in the first video he talked about the first vision. Read the first vision. What happened to Joseph Smith after the first vision? Dude woke up on his back because he couldn't withstand being, in the presence of Christ, or of God, right? He had to be changed, and then after being changed, he still couldn't take it, right? It's again, in no way is this, oh, you can just run into these people. No, dude, he again, yeah.
body parts in Islam or the actual human body in Mormonism, both religions shift away from the idea of a spiritual, incorporeal God and give us a God that's way more like us. It's almost as if these religions are fashioning God in our image instead of the other way around. Now, contrast this with Christianity.
Oh, it's like they're fashioning God in our image and not the other way around. You mean God says, let's make man in our image? And then, So again, it's very interesting. The Book of Mormon, which again is the first thing released by the prophet Joseph Smith, right? Translated and published. It itself correctly defines that by being made in God's image is literally being made in God's image, right? Now, in the Book of Mormon, it's specifying that's talking about the body that Christ will take on, right? But as the restoration goes on, we see that it God Himself also does have a body, right? So I just want to, I'm just trying to be as honest as possible. In no way is that somehow changing Joseph's mind or like, oh, let's go this way or this way. The whole of the restoration is set up for that to be revealed and for this plan of salvation to be as we have it now. It's actually really beautiful how God went line upon line. But I point that out to say it's just beautiful how from the very beginning the Book of Mormon is leading us to have these beliefs, these correct beliefs, right? Joseph Smith's time was full of people saying, "Oh no, being made in God's image is just like we have thought process, and no other animal has thought process. So we're made in God's image because we can think, right? We have free will. God has free. He's the only one with free will, and He gave that to us, right? No, the Book of Mormon literally said, "Hey, this is like Jesus talking to the brother of Ether, or sorry, the brother of Jared." And he's like, "Oh, you see my spirit body? Yeah, I'm actually gonna have a real body, and you're actually made after my spirit body and the real body I'm gonna have." Like from the very beginning, right? It's saying like, no, we're literally made in God's image, and it's beautiful.
In Orthodox Christian belief, God is spirit, John 4:24, and He's utterly transcended. He exists beyond corporeal limitations. While God did take
So let me just talk about that real quick. I'll probably make another short video talking about this, but this is like something that they usually bring up about how God has a spirit. He just quoted, I forgot the quote, but they'll say, look, God is spirit. I think it's in John 4 or something. And they'll say that and they'll just like think that's a mic drop. And then they'll go to Christ, right? After his resurrection, where he shows himself to the apostles and to, or specifically to doubting Thomas. And he'll say, look, come and touch me, right? Because a spirit hath not body of flesh and bones. And they'll say, and they'll quote that and they'll be like, so God is spirit. He doesn't have a body of flesh and bones. So therefore Mormonism wrong. But they quote that as if that somehow proves their point when it doesn't. It actually kind of proves more of our point, right? It says God is spirit. And then Christ standing in front of these apostles says, hey, you might want to come touch me, because if you don't touch me, you might think I'm a spirit, which is Christ literally saying, okay, that a spirit can have the shape of a human body, right? So they use it can have the shape of a human body, it can have the voice of a human body, it can interact around you like a human body, but unless you touch it to see that it has flesh and bones, it could be a spirit, which literally kind of proves our point. In the Book of Mormon, it literally says that the brother of Jared saw the spirit body of Christ. Okay. Christians don't believe that God has a spirit body in the shape of a man. They don't, right? So they're trying to quote these things. Again, if you look up online, does God have a body? It'll be all these Christian apologetic answers trying to answer the Mormons, and they'll always quote God is spirit, and they'll quote Jesus saying, "A spirit hath not a body of flesh and bone." And then they just like gloss over, like, oh look, this is the mic drop. This proves it. When Jesus saying that literally says, well, a spirit can have the shape of a body. That's literally what that means by him saying, come touch me, because if you just see me, you'll say I'm a spirit and that I have this shape of a human body, right? Which proves more our point. The Book of Mormon talks about that. But I'm just saying, they don't believe that God has a spirit body. By quoting that, again, it doesn't prove our point, but it aligns more with us than with them. Um, they don't believe God has any sort of form. He's just this ball of immaterial ideological perfection, right? But yet he's simple, and that is God. And he doesn't actually have feelings. So let me get into this. This is a perfect spot to get into this. So classic Christianity believes in the hypostatic union, okay? Because they have to believe in this mysterious mystery of the hypostatic union, because somehow God, the second person of the Trinity, Jesus, the Son of God, the eternally unbegotten Son of God, came down, and he is simple, right? He's part of the Trinity. He's God. He's divine. So he is himself a simple being. He can in no way feel emotions. He can't have change in him. He's all these things that divine simplicity requires Jesus Christ has, and yet he came down and took on a body and was incarnate. Okay, so Christ was able to do that. And how can the second person of the Trinity, the Son of God, actually interact with this body? And the answer is they don't know. So they again, if you talk to Christians, they'll say, well, the hypostatic union. Did we mention the hypostatic union? The hypostatic union is basically a conceit that there is a problem. There is this issue that we can't answer about how this simple God and this physical body can actually interact. So they say hypostatic union. I believe the hypostatic union is one of the weakest parts of the Trinity. It's one of the weakest parts of classic Christianity, because they can only purely rely on mystery and just say, you have to believe this dogma because we say it's orthodox, because councils, like 300, 400 years after Jesus said it was, right? But it doesn't make sense, right? And I'll probably make a video about this later, but it literally harms like the gospel, right? Because you're saying, well, God came down to suffer for your sins, but yet the second person of the Trinity can't feel pain because he's a simple God. So therefore, he's mysteriously somehow tied to this human body, and this human body is suffering. But Jesus, the unbegotten second person of the Trinity, who is simple, in no way feels any part of that. So literally, the human nature of Christ is allowed to suffer. And we say that they say God came down and suffered for us, but the second person of the Trinity, right, God the Son, literally felt none of it, right? They said, well, he came down and he lived a mortal life, but he literally could experience none of that because he's simple. He couldn't feel happiness. He couldn't feel joy in it. He couldn't do anything because he is simple. So therefore, somehow they just say hypostatic union, and we should just, throw up our hands and say, yay, this answers everything. But how, right? How can they say that God felt this when God in no way could, because he's simple? And they can see that by saying there has to be this mysterious hypostatic union to tie to a body, and it's just the body. So basically, Christ come down and he took on this human nature, this body, and this human body's getting beat up over and over and over again, or I guess not beat up, but the human body is the thing that's taking the suffering or being happy, and God feels none of it. And so I just feel like that is in itself a big issue. In restored thought, in our belief, we say no, because of our theology and how it's set up. Christ himself literally could come down. His soul enters into a body. He's born. He lives like all of us, a mortal life, and he can feel every single thing that happens to him. They can't say that. They can't say that the Son of God, the eternally unbegotten second person of the Trinity, could feel anything. He can't. He's simple, right? And by being simple means he can have no change. And going from happy to sad is a change. So therefore, he cannot feel emotion. He cannot he can't feel suffering, because suffering goes from being without suffering to being suffering, right? Being without pain to being in pain. We believe God actually came down and he felt everything. And in the Book of Mormon, it said he took on the pains and the afflictions and the sicknesses of his people, right? So that he knew how to better send help and succor to them in their times of need, right? That's in Alma 7. I think that is amazing. In classic Christianity, who throw us out and say that if you believe in the Book of Mormon, if you're Mormon, if you believe in the restored gospel, you're not Christian. They can't answer. Well, how can you actually say that God felt this when he, because of who he is philosophically, and what your theology says, he's so simple, he actually can't feel suffering and pain. How can he at all know how we feel personally, right? So I just think that him going after God having a body without actually being intellectually honest about, wow, that, again, he doesn't know this. He hasn't done the research, but there's many things that our theology opens up and answers and actually provides a better reasoning for than classic Christianity. And the only thing he has to really go on is, well, how did everything really start? And they just claim, well, because we say God's simple, then that gives us the ability to say that he's the unmoved mover. But again, let me quote him: "At what cost?" There's so many things that don't make sense with classic Christianity. So I think we've beat this horse pretty dead. Let's try to finish out this video and see what he's got to say. So
on a human body in the person of Jesus Christ, that was a one-time unique act of incarnation, done not to show God's eternal nature, but to redeem humanity. God became man contingently, not because he's always had a body, like essentially, but because it was.
Okay, so real quick, again, he threw that theologically charged gift in there. He said essentially, God essentially does not have a physical body. God is not limited to his physical body or by his physical body. So essentially, God is not embodied, right? In our doctrine, in our scriptures, it clearly says God is a spirit, and he is the most intelligent of us all, right? And if he even quotes the Kingfold Discourse, the Kingfold Discourse goes completely into explanatory mode and explains that God himself organized so that we could take on bodies, right, and become like him. And so God is a spirit eternally who himself took on a body, and then we are following in those footsteps, right? So God is not essentially and has not always been embodied in a body. He took that on, as did Christ, right? So Christians believe that Christ can go from not embodied to embodied. We believe that the Father and Christ can both do that.
Was part of his divine plan to save us. His divine essence remains entirely incorporeal, untouched by physical limitations. Unlike the versions of God in
untouched. Okay, so real quick, he just proved my point. Untouched by physical limitations. He believes that Jesus and God are the same being. So God is untouched by physical limitations. But yet God came down and was embodied, but because of the hypostatic union. So therefore, nothing that Christ went through in the body actually affected Christ in his eternal divine existence. Christ did not feel the unbegotten second person of the Trinity felt nothing, right? He felt no emotion for you. He felt like, and I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying that's the theology, and yet the restored gospel completely tears that up and says no. He came down and willingly suffered everything for you, and he felt every inch of it. It's not just some human nature that felt part of it, and that the divine nature was just along for the ride and it felt nothing. No, he felt everything for you, and he suffered everything for you so that he could help you come unto him, and that through him return to live with God. So I think that's beautiful. I think we're basically done with this. It's going to go on. He's going to, I think, yeah, it ends, and then he's going to bring up his 15 part episode. So again, all these are 3 episodes. This is going really long because I like to ramble. But we're about to get into the third video. This third video is again one of 15 that he's going to release, not videos, but attacks. Okay, he's trying to parallel Muhammad and Joseph Smith, and by doing these parallels, he's trying to show that these are disturbing parallels, and that basically it's going to prove both Islam and Mormonism wrong in one sweep, right? He's going to kill two birds with one stone, or I guess in this case, 15 stones. He's trying to make 15 parallels, and he's trying to kill these two birds and these 15 stones. And so, as we've seen so far, the first one completely laughable, didn't make sense. The second one about body, it's actually turns around because believing that God is embodied, and that actually He isn't this simple, uncreated thing. It actually answers a lot of questions that that the restored gospel literally can't answer, and classic Christianity can't. Yeah, so we had somebody right here saying 15 videos. The church is living rent free in this guy's head, and that's literally true, right? Yeah, shout out to Harrison. We love that guy. But it's not 15 videos; it's 15 attacks, and he's doing this one huge video, and he's releasing a couple as a like trailer, as a get ready for it. And yeah, so the church is living rent free in this guy's head, as the church does with like basically a lot of these Christian apologetics. They live rent free, and they're always trying to find out ways to disprove us. And again, they literally, or they many times just do copy and paste from these websites that they just frequent, that again or just copy and paste from other people, and they don't actually look into doing research from Latter-day Saint friendly resources. So let's get into this last video real quick. Let me remove that one, and let's stop the screen share. Oh, and yeah, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you are enjoying the content. That's definitely going to help us out here. Spread the word, and let's share this. And this one, again, so this one is another good question. This one is about polygamy. So again, I mean, this one's not a bad question, but it kind of just shows that he didn't really do, or at least he didn't care to do friendly or Latter-day Saint friendly research. Which, if you're trying to make a good video, you would want to give the best of both sides. Now, this right here, we clearly see. Let me make this so you can see this more bigger. Right here. So this is clearly shows this title, right? Discussing how Joe and Mo, okay, clear, obviously Joseph Smith and Muhammad, right, gave themselves extramarital privileges. This is number 13 of 15, right? So again, just shows you just that title, where he's coming from. So let's start it and see.
All right, so let's talk perks. So Muhammad and Joseph Smith both enjoyed some rather, let's say, self-serving divine exemptions when it came to marriage. Muhammad could marry beyond the usual 4-wife limit, and Joseph Smith,
again, the AI image of Joseph Smith, they're just always so goofy.
he took things way further with over 30 wives, including some already married. Sounds pretty convenient, right? When you're the prophet, I guess the rules don't necessarily apply to you. And this is just one of 15 very shady.
Again, he's trying to build this up. One of 15 very shady things. Just get ready. Look in the link in the description. I'm about to drop this huge video. It's going to tear him apart. Yeah, he keeps saying that. So real quick, I want to get into this real quick before we even get into the whole polygamy thing about Joseph Smith that he's going to bring up. Christians are clearly hypocritical with the whole polygamy thing, because they sit there and say, look, polygamy is terrible, it's bad, and then they just like completely like blank and realize that the only way that we have Christ being born in to fulfill all the prophecies that he's to fulfill, and to actually perform the atonement and save us from our sins, is thanks to like at least 4, maybe 5 well documented polygamous families, right? So God clearly used polygamy to bring about the greatest event in the world, which is the atonement of Jesus Christ, right? And his resurrection and all that entails. But yet polygamy is the worst thing you can ever do. Like, oh, yeah, those Mormons, they Joseph Smith's just a polygamist, and that clearly shows he's going to go into hell, and he in no way was ever teaching anything that from God. But yet all through the Old Testament there is polygamy present, right? One of my favorite parts is I guess I should have looked up for this video, but I didn't. There's already a chapter where I think it's Jacob. He's taking like his third or fourth wife. In the next chapter, God's like, "Hello, my friend," right? Like God calls him his friend, and you're just like, at that point, you'd think God right there would like, it's such if this is such an important doctrine, and practice and believe that in every instance of human history, a man should only have one wife, then right there he should be like, "Hey, Jacob, I love you. I know you're in this situation. You probably can't get out of it, but I need you to know polygamy's wrong, right? And so maybe we can make this exception because you've already done this, and I need this to fill some prophecies, but all of your descendants need to know that they can't do this." No, he didn't do that, which actually led to people like David and Solomon, them having also multiple wives, which I think is very interesting. In the Bible literally says that was it the prophet Nathan? I forgot which prophet it was. Literally said to Solomon or David, I think it was David, "I gave you your wives, multiple," right? And so very interesting, very funny that they just love to battle on this polygamy ground, but the Old Testament is full of it. Now, I'm not here to be a polygamy apologist in that I think it's a good thing. I don't like polygamy. I don't believe in polygamy being current or that we should go back to that or anything like that. I don't want polygamy or any way. I'm just simply stating it's very hypocritical to attack people like Joseph Smith or to attack the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because we used to do polygamy in the past. When, dude, look in the past in your Bible. You also did it. I think it's hilarious. So, Abraham, Jacob, David. Again, these are people literally polygamist, and they had to be in order for Christ to pop up, to be able to be born where he was to fulfill the prophecies, and in order to have all the conditions right to save us from our sins, right? So, again, it's just hypocritical, right? And this video that he's making is hypocritical because he's like, look, he's saying that Muhammad and Joseph Smith gave themselves that's a good question. I don't know. Deuteronomous against or for polygamy? That's a good question. I don't know. I would say that I think because it's in the law, I think in the law, if your brother did not have seed, did not have children, you could marry his wife, and then after marrying him, let's see, I think you would raise seed unto your brother who died without seed. So therefore, I think they might be not maybe for, but not against. I don't know. That's a good question. But let's see. Where was I going with this? So this video is very hypocritical because in this video he's like, look, so Joseph Smith gave himself extramarital privileges, right, that his followers, quote unquote, didn't have. And we'll get into what he says about that and how he didn't really do any kind of research, at least from the best people, especially like Brian Hales. Again, the best person to ever go to is Brian Hales. And again, Brian Hales' website is like the easiest thing to find. It's josephsmithpolygamy.org, right? So any kind of research done about like Joseph Smith polygamy, if you can't find josephsmithpolygamy.org, I don't know what you're doing. And this guy clearly didn't. Again, it seems like he didn't want to. This is copy and paste from critical sources and nothing friendly. Because again, he's just trying to make this thing to give, I would say, his viewers an endorphin release and just confirm what they already believe about Islam and Mormonism. But this video is hypocritical because he says that both of them gave themselves abilities beyond what their followers could. Well, Christians say, well, the New Testament says polygamy is bad. And then you're like, okay, but these prophets in the Old Testament, they had multiple wives. And they're just like, yeah, but polygamy's bad. And you talk to some people, they'll even be like, well, God didn't want that to happen. So, like that was always just men doing it, and it always ended up bad. You don't know how many times many times that didn't make any sense. You don't know how many times I've heard that, and I'm just like, that doesn't make sense, right? You're saying God never corrected, because it's not in the Old Testament. There's never um, a correction saying like, look, Abraham, bro, repent, right? Jacob, bro, repent. Like you should not have had more than one wife. No, it's never there. I had somebody tell me on my mission in Peru, well, actually, Abraham repented of his polygamy. And I'm like, no, it didn't. And the guy couldn't pull up the verse to tell me. So this whole video is like, well, these prophets gave themselves abilities of marrying more than one person than their own followers had. So this guy hasn't read the Bible, because that means Abraham wouldn't be a prophet. Jacob wouldn't be a prophet. David actually, you have to say he was a prophet, because the Psalms are themselves prophetic. And, it's claimed that he wrote them. So, and possibly Moses. So I'm just saying, this whole theme of this video that Cameron just made, that these prophets are giving themselves extra abilities that their followers couldn't. If you're saying that the standard for God, or not the standard, but that the rule for God is men can only have one wife, and then that these prophets gave themselves more, then you would clearly be saying that these are fallen prophets or not prophets. So I think this video itself is self-refuting, because he would have to be going against the Bible, or he would just have to be not even throwing that out. It's hypocritical. That's what it is. So let's get into what he says about Joseph Smith. Let me skip to it. It starts at 111. There you go. Let's hear what he says.
Straight from God. Joseph Smith wasn't.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Let me put it on the screen.
About to miss on the fun with a customized marriage plan straight from God. Joseph Smith wasn't about to miss on the fun either. According to Doctrine and Covenants 132, polygamy wasn't just divinely sanctioned, it was essential for exaltation in the afterlife. But Smith didn't just.
That's completely not true. It is not essential for exaltation after. Again, we will get into real quick after he says a little bit more. I'm going to pull up Brian Hale's website so you know what it looks like, how to find it. Again, josephsmithpolygamy.org. And then he actually has a PDF of quick polygamy facts to debunk a lot of these things. And we're actually going to use that because the facts that are on there completely debunk what he's about to say.
Stop at your average polygamy. He took it further, marrying at least 30 women, including some who were already married to other men. This practice of polyandry, something not extended to his followers, was justified by Smith as part of God's grand plan. Doctrine and Covenants.
Okay, so let's stop that real quick, and let's take this off the screen, and let me share real quick josephsmithpolygamy.org. So this is Brian Hill's website. This is the home screen. Okay, right here. Okay, so any questions you have related to Joseph Smith polygamy, polygamy in Kirtland area or the Nauvoo era, early Mormon polygamy, start here, right? Again, if you're doing any kind of research or have any kind of questions about Joseph Smith's polygamy and you don't find josephsmithpolygamy.org, then you're intentionally not looking. You're intentionally only looking for critical sources, right? So, fun fact: Don Bradley, who is an amazing historian, he actually was a member who left the church, and Brian Hales, during his project of acquiring all these documents and all this information for Joseph Smith polygamy, and also the books that he wrote. I think he has like a trilogy on Joseph Smith polygamy. He hired Don Bradley to help him, or asked Don Bradley to help him, while Don Bradley was an ex-Mormon and was not a believing member, right? And through coming back and getting back into the Mormon history sphere more with this, Don Bradley, while he it wasn't specifically Joseph Smith's polygamy, but it was being back in the atmosphere and him finding some other interesting things in the Book of Mormon, I think in Ether, he actually reconverted to the church, and I think that's beautiful. So polygamy is not this big deal that always drags people away. There's that in of itself is a interesting um, story. Okay, so this real quick is 1 second. Okay, so this real quick is in of itself is the Joseph Smith polygamy website. And right here, let me stop sharing that screen and pop up the quick facts URL. Okay, I think this is not URL, PDF. Okay, is this sharing good? Yes. Okay, so right here. So these are the quick facts. So Kirtland and Nauvoo polygamy. Okay, so right here, look, boom, right off the bat, was what about sealings to legally married women? So this guy right here keeps claiming that Joseph Smith is married. And again, whenever when somebody is being disingenuous, talking about Joseph Smith's polygamy, when they don't say sealing, they say marriages, right? Because Joseph Smith was not married legally for time and eternity, right? Meaning time meaning a real wife to 34 women, right? There's ceilings. So some of these, as it says right here, let's get into this. Some of the ceilings that he had were for time only, just for this life. Some of them were for time and eternity, for this life and the next, and some were only for eternity, right? So when talking about Joseph's polygamy, you have to you have to know this. You have to define this. Clearly, Cameron didn't do that because he didn't care to, right? Or he didn't do the research to actually know that. So Joseph Smith was not just simply married for time to 30 women, which means he could have uh, he could have uh, that marriage could have included sexual relations, right? Joseph Smith only was involved in sexual relations with certain people he was married to for time, right? Or for time and eternity. He was never involved with people he was only sealed to for eternity, right? Because that was not something for this life. And also, before someone says this in the comments, Joseph Smith didn't sell sealings as a look, be good in this life and then get sealed to all these women and then you'll have them for forever in eternity, right? He never, that was never the case for sealings. Sealings was something to tie the righteous together in order so as a unit we could all go back and live with God, right? So when sealings were started, you would have people, men, being sealed to each other as brothers, or like, oh, I want to be sealed to this person as my father, right? And so the men were being sealed to men. You had women being sealed to other men, and so this is what happened with these legally married women. Okay, so it says 14 of Joseph Smith's sealings were to women with legal husbands. Two of these are too poorly documented to concern what happened. One involved a pretend marriage. Okay, so this was during the early days of polygamy, where it was not completely, I would say, put out there in full view, because of what happened to the Saints in Jackson County, Missouri. Joseph Smith clearly knew that if he came out and said, "Look, we endorse polygamy entirely," that it would cause riots and put saints in jeopardy. And so, and saints would probably lose their lives due to mobbings and riotings from other people. Uh, the crap. So, who wins a stake polling contest, Capturing Christianity or AI Joseph Smith? It's a good question. Joseph Smith was very good at stake polling. I just saw that comment real quick. Okay, so so one of these was a pretend marriage, which means the person was actually married for time and eternity to Joseph Smith, and that they just said that they were married to someone else, but they weren't actually married to him. And that was because polygamy was not yet open into the public or announced fully to the body of the church. That didn't happen until after Joseph Smith died, and they moved out west, where they knew that people wouldn't attack them if they shared their views. So right here, the remaining 11 appear to have been non-sexual, eternity-only sealings. Oh, so you mean Cameron just totally left this out, that the best researcher for Joseph Smith's polygamy completely says that, oh, these people, Joseph Smith was actually married to them that had husbands. He was only just sealed to them, and that these sealings in no way involved any form of sexual relationships. So he completely just left that out. Interesting. He also didn't leave out that of it's also said that Joseph Smith just married people when their husbands were on missions. Not the case. The only one possible, and it's possible because there's 2 dates for when they were sealed, and one the guy was on a mission, and the other date the guy was home from the mission. So history doesn't help us there. And then right here, none of the women or their legal husbands left any complaints against Joseph Smith. So again, this has nothing to do with sexual relationships. He wasn't stealing people's wives. It's, again, Cameron doesn't care about sharing facts. He just wants to confirm people's beliefs against Mormonism. So again, this is a very good. It talks about what Emma had to say. It gives you the timeline right here of polygamy from the beginning of the Restoration in 1831 all the way to basically right before his death. And yeah, so something that I found that was interesting, real quick, is, and this is something I didn't know until preparing for this video, at least 115 men and women entered into plural sealings in Nauvoo prior to Joseph Smith's death, right? So this was not something purely that Joseph Smith was like, I'm going to be the polygamist here and no one else can, and you just have to follow along. No, he was spreading this thing as it was required of him to do from God, because polygamy was something that God told him to do. And again, if you read this timeline, you'll see that. And so, yeah, this is Brian Hill's website. Now, the whole thing I wanted to share with that is Brian Hill, the best researcher of Joseph Smith's polygamy, he comes away with saying, look, Joseph Smith is clearly a sincere believer that God told him to start this practice. In no way is this a sexual endeavor to get with women. Because again, he was sealed to over 30 women, right? And he only had relations with, probably not even half of that, right? And so it was in no way a thing to sleep with as many women as possible, as many of these websites that are against, the Christian apologists love to try to claim. You go to, I guess, Corruption Christianity. Just again, he's trying to claim that. You go to other people like Cold Case Christianity, and they're like, oh, well, Joseph Smith just want everything for sexual gratification and money and all these things, and he makes all these outlandish claims, but doesn't have the evidence to back it up when you actually look into the facts. I've always wanted to do a video on Cold Case Christianity because I just think it's interesting because he gets so many things wrong, and he claims to be this awesome detective who, using his detective skills, found out that Christianity was true, but yet appears to only read one-sided critical views of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So he's a detective that has a bias problem. So let's get into the rest of the video real quick, and we will end the stream because it's gone on long enough. So let me share this. Let me share this real quick. Okay.
132 explicitly outlines polygamy and includes special provisions for Joseph Smith, granting him the authority to perform these marriages as part of his prophetic mission. But that's not all. William Clayton, Joseph Smith's personal secretary, kept a journal documenting many of these revelations and marriages. His entries confirm that Smith married women who were already married to other men, something the average Mormon was not allowed to do. Clayton.
Okay. So he was sealed to these women, not married. Again, Cameron's trying to be some sort of authority figure on this fact, on this issue. Does not tell you that there's a difference in marrying, right, or being sealed for just time, or being married for time, and sealings, which sealing is specifically a spiritual endeavor. So you can be married for time and eternity, which you're married and sealed. You can just be married, which is on earth, or you can be sealed for time, for eternity only, which means that relationship is nothing to do with sexual relations. So again, he completely leaves that out, or he doesn't know that, which shows his ignorance. And again, none of these men came and complained against Joseph Smith, because he wasn't stealing their wives. They wanted to be sealed because it was revealed that being sealed is part of God's plan to be sealed to somebody. And again, sealings at this time was more of a let's get into a family union. Let's get into let's combine the righteous, and as a righteous mass, um, return to live with God. Right. So again, people will be sealed to each other as brothers. People will be sealed to other people. You'd have people adopting people as their sons and daughters through sealings. So the restoration is line upon line. So when sealings first came out, it's not like it is today. Now you're only sealed to your immediate family, and that goes up into a chain, and then you're sealed to your spouse, right? And so you're sealed to your kids, you're sealed to your parents, and you're sealed to your spouse. And then obviously, if everyone does that, it's a chain that goes on for all of human history.
His journal shows how Smith's marital practices were presented as divinely commanded, giving him greater marital freedoms than anyone else in the community.
Again, these AI images.
Essentially, Smith had a special.
Okay, so again, he's trying to say that, oh well, Smith could marry women who are already married, and that no one else could. No, he was sealed for only eternity to these women, right? He wasn't married to them. They had no marriage relationship. It was not an intimate relationship. So again, this all falls flat.
Passed from God to operate by his own set of relationship guidelines, while his followers were held to a much different standard. Now, what's really striking here is how both Muhammad, I mean, it's obvious, but both Muhammad and Joseph Smith granted themselves greater marital freedoms under the guise of divine approval. And let's be honest about this, like, this is exactly what you'd expect from a false prophet.
Oh my gosh, this would be exactly what you expect, just giving themselves all these abilities just to, indulge in sexual pleasures and taking all the women they want, except for that's not the case for Joseph Smith. Again, please go do your research with the best experts of Joseph Smith's polygamy, which is josephsmithpolygamy.org. It's Brian Hales, right? He gives you the facts. He tells you basically, after just reading the facts, and he's not trying to he's just trying to present everything, because in all the interviews, go look up interviews with Brian Hales. His whole thing is, he believes that the restoration is true, and he believes that by giving all the facts and putting them all out there, that it doesn't disprove anything, and except better yet, it just by putting out the facts and not trying to twist them to meet our expectations. The facts themselves give a reason for belief, right? Which is why he says clearly the facts, the historical facts say that Joseph Smith was a sincere actor, believing that God did command him to implement polygamy. In no way is it just him saying, "Oh yeah, God wanted me to do this," wink, wink, and then him helping out the homies, getting them more women, right? In no way could that ever have been the case when looking at all the facts. And then he's gonna do what he did in the first video. So let's see how he turns around and tries to compare these guys to God, right? To Jesus, and say, well, Jesus is perfect. Of course, Jesus is perfect. No one in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is trying to compare Joseph Smith to Jesus, say that Joseph Smith is anywhere on that level.
Create self-serving exemptions while pretending it's all part of some big divine plan. It's actually the perfect setup for a false prophet. Use religion to justify your own personal desires, while your followers get stuck with the more restrictive rule set. In stark contrast, Jesus Christ never sought additional privileges for himself. He didn't carve out special rules for his own benefit. Instead, Jesus lived by the same moral and ethical standard he taught to everyone else. No extra wives, no wives at all, no hidden exceptions.
There you go. So clearly, Joseph Smith is nowhere on the level of Jesus. Jesus is God. He's perfect. It really makes his argument fall flat when he's like, well, in the other case, Jesus did nothing like this. Okay, that's fair. So should we throw out Abraham? Should we throw out David? Should we throw out And Jacob, should we throw out all the books and all the things that talk about them being prophets? Because according to you, like, they're not, right? Because if God's standard, not standard, but if God's, if the rule is you only have one wife, and all these people gave themselves more than one wife, they're giving themselves extra benefits than the normal follower of God would have. So therefore, they're doing the same thing that you're claiming Joseph Smith doing, which means it's hypocritical for you to not point that out and not say, well, he even said it. Oh, this is the best thing for a false prophet, right? So he's attacking the Bible and doing that. He's attacking these other prophets by doing that, and he's not being very clear in saying, oh, well, thanks to like 5 polygamous relationships, Jesus Christ was able to be born in the line of David through the tribe of Judah, as a descendant of Abraham, in order to fulfill the covenant of being the seed of Abraham, through which all the families of the world would be blessed. So I just think it's very interesting that God, in His plan, required polygamous relationships, and that it's such a sticky subject for people when talking about Joseph Smith or the past of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Say, oh, they have polygamy, so it's obviously false. Again, not here to support, promote, or seek anyway the return of polygamy. I'm simply just saying, let's not be hypocritical, and let's just try to share truth and not be polemic or share just bad researched attacks on Joseph Smith. So this is the end of the video. It's freaking an hour and 30 minutes. It's crazy. But this is 3 videos that we went through. Sorry it took so long. Of 15, right? Not 15 videos, but this is 3 attacks of 15. He's going to release a big video. Each one of these is 3 minutes. So it's going to be, almost, I would say, I guess, an hour in length of attacks on Joseph Smith and Muhammad. And if there's poorly researched of these, we're going to have a lot more on these streams to go through and just point them out. And if they're as bad as the first one that we talked about, I mean, that was laughable. That was terrible. So again, Capturing Christianity, please do some more research. Maybe talk to some Latter-day Saints, get their perspectives on it. That way you can give at least a neutral, or at least you can say, well, this is what they would say, this is what I say, something like that. Because it's clear that you're only looking at critically leaning research or whatever when you're looking or studying for these videos. So yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and leave any comments down below. Y'all have a good one.